All right, difficult behaviors. A definition. Difficult behaviors are those behaviors that cause a problem for the child and those around them. Okay? All children display difficult behaviors at times, but the frequency and intensity at which some children react cause significant problems for themselves and those around them. So, some things you might hear parents say. She throws a fit when she doesn't get what she wants. That one is huge. They always throw a temper tantrum when I tell them no, when they can't get something at the store. I can't even take them to Walmart. Okay, we all hear that. He doesn't listen. He does what he wants to do. We hear that a lot as well. Okay? So, when a child doesn't listen and does what they want to do, that causes a problem for them, and then in turn causes a problem for whoever's asking them to do something, right? Now, all children will display difficult behaviors at some time, okay? It's the intensity and the frequency at which these difficult behaviors present themselves that they start becoming a problem. So if you're seeing, we see them when it's more intense and more frequent. Okay, that's when we see them in our office. Okay, here are some examples of difficult behaviors. Temper tantrums, physical and verbal aggression, defiance, irritability, impulsivity, restlessness, hyperactivity, self-control problems. Hyperactivity, self-control problems, impulsivity, we see a lot of those things. I think that oftentimes we struggle with, okay, what's normal? Especially if you're dealing with the little guys and development, what's normal and what's over the top? These behaviors may also be accompanied by sadness, discouragement, and low self-esteem. Basically, just because a child has these behaviors does not mean that they're depressed. That's not what this is saying. However, what it is saying is that children who engage in these behaviors are frequently not happy kids. Okay? Difficult behavior can be a sign of depression or anxiety, especially in children. What are they struggling with? What is in their way? Something is in a child's way if continually, maybe even on a daily basis, every other day, they are acting out and showing us that they're not successful in the classroom, maybe. Okay? So maybe in the classroom, maybe it's math class for an older kid that they struggle with. Okay, what's in their way? Maybe they're not understanding. Maybe there's a child in there that they're struggling with and they can't focus. It doesn't necessarily have to be the subject matter. Depression is often overlooked in children because in kiddos, especially in boys, it looks more aggressive. They're more cranky, irritable. Because if you think about it, society has said, and we teach our kids this early on without it's not conscious, I don't think, but if a boy were to sit down on the playground and just start crying because they felt sad, what are the other boys going to do? Tease. There may be a boy or two, I don't want to take it that far, that might come up to him and say, "What's wrong? What's going on?" But typically the other boys are going to shy away from him and let him do his thing, and the girls and the teacher are going to go over and see what's going on, right? If a boy displays sadness through anger, then they get, "Oh man, I'm going to beat him up." Okay. And they get support for that. They get encouragement for that. That is a positive, attention for that. Okay? So especially in boys, when kiddos are depressed, we see that irritability and that crankiness. Girls too, however, girls are given a little bit more permission to cry. If a girl cries at school, what do the other little girls do? They come running around her. "What's going on with you? What's happened? What's going on?" They want to be helpful, so she gets that support and that care through her tears. However, for girls, if they show their aggressive side, right, they start wanting to beat somebody up. They're so mad. Do other girls support that? And of course, we're talking in general terms here. I'm well aware that there are probably some out there. But in general terms, that's not supported in girls. So we really have to also we have to kind of think about what society has put out there. So what we typically do is we look at what's been given to us. We have a boy who is aggressive, a boy who is irritable, okay? So what's been given to us, we typically start with that. But if we're not making any progress by intervening with that child, on anger management and stuff like that, maybe we do need to take a look at some other sources of that. It also could be anxiety. So some signs to look for in depression in children, along with the irritability, the crankiness, the possible aggression, changes in eating or sleeping habits, social withdrawal, low energy levels, little pleasure in activities, suicidal ideas or attempts. And this would be a change in that behavior, okay? It wouldn't be, if a child already has, sleeping habits that are a little off, we're looking for changes. I think we said this, that all children display difficult behaviors at times, but we're looking for those reactions that are more often with a higher intensity. So, and it causes that significant problem for themselves or for their families. So have you ever talked to a family who says, we just don't go anywhere? We can't take that child anywhere. If we go somewhere, it's going to be a problem. Okay, that is causing a significant problem for the family and for the child. They can't enjoy themselves as a family outside of the home. And the other kids maybe start feeling resentment toward the child that is causing problems, because everybody knows in the family, it's not like anybody's not aware that that child is struggling. So that's significant problems. They don't go anywhere. And then another, for the child, sometimes they're also in trouble at school. Okay, so that's a significant problem for them. Okay, so now let's look at causes of difficult behaviors. Okay, stressful life events. What are stressful life events? Maybe poverty, marital issues between the parents. Another cause of difficult behaviors would be child rearing practices. Okay, children need positive interactions with their parents. And oftentimes, with two parents working, you get home, it's 6 o'clock, you've got homework, you've got bath time, you've got dinner, you've got bedtime. And I know from the folks that I've talked to, that's a very stressful time period. So you have lots of orders being barked. Go put your clothes up. Go get in the bathtub. It's time to eat. Come on, let's go, let's go. It's 8 o'clock. You have to go to bed in 15 minutes. Okay, that's the time that a lot of parents get to spend with their children. So we want to help parents understand how important it is that they have positive interactions. Okay? If you don't have enough positive interactions, then that child could potentially start acting out in order to gain control over or to get any kind of attention. Nervous system functioning, we're talking like ADHD, okay? Sometimes there are issues with how the brain functions, okay? This can cause difficult behaviors. Remember back on the examples of difficult behaviors, we had impulsivity, we had self-control issues, and we had hyperactivity. Sometimes those are directly related to how our brain functions. So if you have a child with ADHD, for instance, then they're just going to have that little bit extra weight to carry around and learning how to make better decisions. Everyday life circumstances, okay? Maybe they're tired. Anybody else in here cranky when they're tired? I sure am. Hungry, forget it. If you're sick, okay? If you don't feel good, if you're coming down with something. Okay, even as grown-ups, sometimes we don't manage that very well. Other everyday life circumstances can be school. Our kids have to get up and go to school every day. Maybe they deal with a bully every day. Maybe they have a teacher that they're having some sort of conflict with. Okay? So these are things that are everyday life circumstances that can cause some of these difficult behaviors. Sibling rivalry, test anxiety, their appearance, peer pressure, sports ability, those things can cause difficult behaviors. And then just temperament. Maybe they're just born that way. Some of us are a little crankier than others in general. Some of us were more sensitive to certain things than other folks. Okay? Sometimes that's the way the kids are too. What parents can do, right off the bat, the main one is to improve the parent-child relationship. All of these things that come under here are ways to improve the parent-child relationship. Okay? I didn't make that distinction on my PowerPoint. So we want to focus on the positive. It is so easy to focus on the negative. You did not you did not do this. Focusing on the positive. Not how they did it, but maybe that they did it. Okay? Listen respectfully. This one can be tough when we don't have time, when we feel rushed. So, we want to listen to our kids. It takes time. Yeah, it takes a conscious effort. You actually have to stop what you're doing and hear them out. That's not an easy thing to do in our world. We're constantly running from one thing to the next. All of us are. Give frequent positive feedback. Have reasonable expectations and match expectations of your child's behavior with their age. Okay, a couple of things here. Have reasonable expectations. If you know, for instance, that you're working with a child that has ADHD, okay, or if you know you're working with a child that, while chronologically they look 7, they're doing everything else a 7-year-old does, but developmentally, maybe emotionally, they don't match. Here they are chronologically age 7, here they are emotionally age 4, maybe? Okay, have reasonable expectations of that. Don't look at that child and have expectations that they're going to emotionally manage things as a 7-year-old. Okay, they're emotionally behind. So we have to have the expectations to match where they are emotionally. So more what parents can do. Be clear about expectations. This happens a lot, and I have a 5-year-old nephew, and sometimes I find myself, not being very clear about what I want him to do. So he goes off, tries to do what I've asked him to, and I'm like, oh, wait, no, that's not right at all. So I have to go back and say, okay, here's what I need you to do. Because so often, if a child has seen you do whatever you're asking them to do or whatever, we think they know how to do it. But we want to be clear about what we expect. Something kind of typical and easy is, okay, you're about to walk into a restaurant with your 5-year-old, okay? Set those expectations. It doesn't mean that every time it's going to be perfect, but you need to let them know what is expected of them. Okay? We expect you to sit in your seat. We expect you to use your inside voice. Okay? You don't want to have a list as long as your arm, but have 2 or 3 expectations for them. Let them know what you want them to do. Because so many times, like we talked about earlier, parents just say, we can't go out. We can't do it. And to some degree, they're probably right. But we go back to, we have to teach them what we want them to do. Provide consistent feedback. Okay? If you see something positive, let them know. If you see something that needs to change, that's okay. If we can say it calmly, you know what might be better? If you were to sit back in your seat instead of crawling on the floor. I know. That sounds like y'all are like, really? Yeah. You might be thinking how frustrated you would be. But you can tell them again what you expect. Give them that consistent feedback. Be consistent. Ooh, that's a toughie. To always be consistent. They get a consequence for it once, They should get a consequence for it again. Because you can be consistent over and over and over and over and over again, and then you're tired, you're frustrated, and you give in. And that kiddo is going to remember the day you gave in, not all of the days that you were consistent and didn't give in. Okay? They're going to remember that, and they're going to be like, okay, they gave in. Now I know what to do to get what I want. So they're going to try, and when it doesn't work, they're going to amp it up a little bit. You gave in once. So, of course, we're always going to, we're going to give in. We're humans, and we are tired, and we do get frustrated. We are going to give in. That's just the way it is, I think. So, but you want to try to be as consistent as possible. Avoid power struggles. I will win. I am the adult. You will do what I say you will do. Okay? Teaching parents how to back out of those power struggles in a way that keeps them in a position of authority, but does not in any way demean the child. Helping them come out of that a little bit. Okay? Understand your child, which is what we talked about by setting reasonable expectations. And anticipate difficult settings, activities, and interactions. Oftentimes, what I have found is that parents seem to think that if they anticipate something and maybe try to go around it or try to work with their child, if they know that this is going to bother the child, that they kind of help them work around it, that somehow they've given up power as a parent. So, I disagree. I think that if you know that your child struggles in Walmart, too much lights, overhead, too many people running around, well then you work with that. Okay? Maybe they don't go to Walmart. That's okay. Here's an idea. Problem solved with your child. What bugs you about that? See if they can tell you. And if they can, then let's work with that. Okay, I understand that. That might bug me too. Okay, last slide. Children do well when they can, not if they want to. I think that is really, really key for us to remember. They're lazy. They just don't want to listen. They just want to do whatever they want to do. Well, that's probably what it looks like. Nobody's disputing that. What is in their way? Why are they not doing their work? What is it? We don't always just have to sit around and guess. We can ask them. Ask them. Even the youngest ones. What's going on? I see that you're not doing your work. This seems to be happening over and over again. What's up? Ask them. And that's a big reframe for a lot of folks. It's a big shift in how we view kids. Is that they're not purposefully acting out to annoy us on a regular basis. Something is probably in their way. Let's figure out what that is. The other thing, real quick, and then I'm going to take questions, comments, what have you, is that there's the idea, the reason I changed my title, the managing idea. I talked about how in my head I have that vision of somebody holding the kid's shoulders, trying to keep them in line, and the child's kind of trying to wriggle out and move out, okay? If we can, as parents, as providers, therapists, psychologists, teachers, social workers, if we can try, and for me, my vision in my head is to understand, okay? Understand. I don't know why this is understand for me, it just is. This is how I do it. If we can understand the kids, okay, something's in their way, they have diagnoses, they're in a house full of folks, they don't have any privacy, they're tired, maybe they don't get any sleep. Instead of managing and trying to keep that child, in a certain way, kind of oppressed. We want them to just do what I say. Let's understand them. Let's see where they're coming from. Let's find out what's in their way for them not doing their best right now.